Live with us now, Senior Alexa Developer Evangelist at Amazon, Jeff Blankenburg. Jeff, what's up, man? How you doing?
Let me unmute. That's the world we live in now is, hey, you're on mute. Thank you for having me, Paul. This is great.
Thank you for being here. You look awesome. I love the background and
Thank
the
you.
headphones. Sweet. So where are you today, Jeff? You're in the Midwest, right?
I am. I live in Columbus, Ohio, but I work for a company in Seattle, and I do a lot of Twitch streaming. So I do a lot of like get your hands dirty, build Alexa stuff, live streaming online. And so this is kind of my Twitch backdrop. It's meant to be flashy and visually appealing, and it's certainly accomplishing that goal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, my son is on Fortnite all the time, and in the pandemic, his Spanish skills have improved quite a bit because we live in Spain, and so he's speaking with his friends playing Fortnite in Spanish, and
That's
he's
great.
trying to figure out how to stream and do all that stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Right.
But thanks again for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you today. Like, there's a bunch of different stuff that we could talk about, obviously, but like one of the things that I've heard you speak about in the past is how to use Alexa to build a business, and we're not talking about a conceptual way to build something super fancy in the future. We're talking about like how somebody can do something right now, today, that's could be super simple to build their business. And so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and you and I kind of conceived this session together, was like how the following types of professions can build businesses on top of Alexa. And we have listed on the conference information: realtor, lawyer, accountant, dentist, primary care doctor, blogger, influencer, restaurateur, franchisee. I think those to me are good examples, and you can riff off of that a little bit if you
Yeah.
want, but yeah, let's get started, man. So like jump right in and tell us like how can these small businesses use Alexa to build something that can help them with their revenue.
Sure. Well, I have notes for pretty much everything you mentioned there, plus some, I think. Um,
Great.
but this all stems from a story that you and I shared probably a year ago,
Yeah,
and
pretty close.
it's been that long already. But I was telling you a story, and I've shared this with other people as well. That I have a friend who's a realtor, and he obviously does. I have my cord twisted around my arm. He has all sorts of houses that he shows, and oftentimes what happens at an open house is he's there by himself, or maybe it's him and one of his staff. But it's not like they have 10 people there waiting for people to show up for an open house. And so he goes in the house, someone shows up, they're like, oh, let's see the master bathroom. And so he takes them and they go off and look at the master bathroom. Meanwhile, more people show up and there's no one. And I've been to enough open houses in my life, if you've ever bought a house. That's just kind of how it goes. You kind of walk in, you're like, hello? It's this weird kind of entrance and awkward greeting, and then suddenly they come downstairs with people you've never met, and you don't know if they're the owners, or like it just becomes this weird kind of awkward scenario. So what he thought would be kind of cool, and where he started, was he set up on the kitchen counter a little picture frame. It's probably a 11 by 17, big enough that you could read it from a little bit of a distance. And it had some notes about like, hey, this is Alexa. She knows everything about this house. You can ask these kinds of questions. And it was things like, when was the roof replaced last? How old's the furnace? When was the house built? Have there been any additions, right? Like all the things that you would normally ask a realtor as you're going through an open house. And all he did to do this was he built a simple Q&A blueprint on Alexa, right? It took him 15 minutes to type in the answers and he was done, which is about the amount of effort he'd want to put into just one house. And so he built that thing. But other realtors come to open houses because they want to see a house, or maybe they want to bring some of their buying customers to look. And so they saw this and they're like, how did you do that? Like it blew their minds that there was this capability to have someone there all the time that can answer questions and be around and be knowledgeable about the property. And so he realized pretty quickly that they thought it was really hard. And so he said, well, you know what? I could actually just build you one. It's just like $500, right? It was enough that it was easily justifiable when you look at the commissions you get from selling a house or whatever. And so he started building these, and it's not a full-time part of his business by any means, but he found a way to use blueprints, which are really just filling out some forms, right? And made it really, really easy for people to be able to do this. And it started becoming part of his business. So that kind of inspired the conversation that we're having now, which is, well, what if I own a restaurant or a dentist's office or a barbershop or whatever? How can I do that? Because you don't always have that luxury, and you don't always want Alexa to be your front desk greeter or anything like that. So there are times where we need to think about other approaches. And so that got me really thinking as we talk about things that's a really unique Alexa experience, right? Where I own the device, I own the stuff that's going to go on that device, and I'm just having people come up and talk to it. That's kind of how the open house worked. But if you think about most other businesses, what I really want is for my customers to be able to interact with my business without having to come to my office or make a phone call or send an email or do whatever, right? They just want to talk into the air like we do with voice, and magic happens. And so as I was thinking about the overarching story to all of this, I think that the number one answer that I give people is, think about what you did with your website 20 years ago. You built a brochure, right? It was a simple page. Maybe it had a picture of your staff or your office building, and it had the address and the phone number and your email address, and that was it, right? There wasn't huge complex menus and all the other stuff that we see on major websites today. It was a brochure-ware website, and there was nothing wrong with that. It made it easy for people to find you, because otherwise they had to look through a phone book, or there was no easy way to find your business. And so you could just say, oh, go to our website. All the information you need is there, even though it was really just the other contact information. So I think brochureware is the first thing that I always recommend to people, is if you don't have a skill for your business, it should at a minimum be able to answer, what is your phone number? What is your address? What are your hours? And that should be easy for you to update, which you could do that basic stuff with a blueprint, publish it to the public, and you're off and running. So again, it's very, very simple and easy to do. But as we start getting into some of this other stuff, one of the other aspects, because I've spent some time talking with my realtor friend, so I have a lot of stories specifically around that business, was the idea of being able to schedule a showing. So now imagine I have a skill that is the personality of my realtor, and I say, hey, tell John that I want to look at a house on Sunday. Okay, what kind of houses are you looking for? Oh, I want something that's over 3,000 square feet. Like, I can start giving them some of those checkpoints. And then when I'm done having a conversation with the skill, John gets an email that says, Jeff's looking for a house with these aspects. Here's a report I pulled from the MLS system that has exactly what you need. It simplifies all of that stuff, because it doesn't really matter who I talk to, and he's not going to have the answers instantly anyway. So why not just let her collect that information? We can have a conversation and kind of grow from there. The other one that I've seen him do a couple of times is that there is a premium that, and I hate to say this, but like most of us that are here listening to this today, I don't consider us the common people. Like, we're aware of technology, we're aware of how this stuff works, and we're aware of how it can be used. So if I tell you, like, hey, this is a smart home, when you're shopping for a house, you're like, well, what does that mean? Is it like a light switch? Like, what makes it a smart home? We can pick that apart. But for a normal person, they're like, this is a smart home? That's amazing. Like, all it really is a smart thermostat and maybe a light switch. But that's enough to qualify it as a smart home, right? And so what he's found is that if you think about selling a $200,000 house, a realtor gets 3% of that. So that's $6,000 that he's making on selling that house. If he can make it more enticing by calling it a smart home, by literally buying a couple of $30 light switches and putting an Echo in the kitchen that the new buyer gets to keep, it's a no-brainer, right? So those kinds of little, like, packages that he can put together. I mean, he could have an electrician on call that's just like, hey, I need you to swap out a couple of these light switches. We're trying to sell this house. Bring these things and put them in here. We're going to leave them for the new buyers, right? That stuff I think is pretty cool, but it really only plays well in the realty space. So let's get into some of the other stuff. One of the things that I've seen, I have not had much experience at all working with lawyers other than have some contracts drawn up or like a will. So nothing super interesting. You're not going to write a will with Alexa. But what you can do is there's a lot of people they're not always sure if they can sue somebody. And sometimes they're justified in it and sometimes they're not. But there are lots and lots of websites out there that will help you understand basically the answer to the question, do I have a case? Right? Is this something that would be worth hiring a lawyer to pursue? Or do I have no chance at even bothering with all this stuff? Those are the kinds of things, these kinds of almost like wizards that let someone say, well, I don't know if I have a good case or not, but I'm really curious if I do. Let me talk to this law firm that I've heard of. And in their skill, it has you want to know if you have a case here? Let's ask these 5 questions and then we can tell you instantly whether it's worth your time to pursue. If you want to pursue it anyway, we'll be happy to take your money. But these are the cases that we generally cover, that kind of stuff, right? I also thought it would be interesting for lawyers to have things like legal dictionaries. What does it mean? Like if I'm being sued, what does that mean? Or what are my options, or whatever. Just simple questions that you would ask a lawyer and they're perfectly qualified to answer, but Alexa probably could answer a lot of those questions for you also. As well as, like I said, like the brochureware contact information stuff I think is really important. If you've seen, lawyers are notorious for advertising on radio and television and all that kind of stuff. So I know the names of law firms. I have no idea when I would use them, but it might be useful to I know their name is this, but I don't know what how to contact them. If I could ask Alexa, that would be super handy. Okay. So another one that kind of tied into realty was mortgage brokers. I'm going through this right now, refinancing my house, and I realized that, God, this is dumb. I could have a conversation with Alexa. Why do I keep getting on phone calls with this guy? I could just go bang, bang, bang. What's your income? Who do you work for? How long you been there? Like all the standard questions you answer for a mortgage. Seemed like that would be good, but it could also be for what are the current mortgage rates for whatever bank you're talking to, and then a number of calculators, right? In a perfect world, 10, 20 years from now, when Alexa has enough context to really know what some people might consider an uncomfortable amount about you. Imagine Alexa could know my credit score, right? That's not something she knows about me at all and doesn't have access to. But imagine she could know that. If I were to say to my device, what would my monthly payment be if I wanted a $200,000 mortgage? Well, one of the key factors in that is what is my credit rating, because that'll affect what kind of interest rates I can get, whether I'm going to have to pay PMI and a number of other things. Those kinds of questions can all be answered instantly. And it can just be a monthly payment for you, Jeff, would be, $1,500 a month or whatever. So I think there's a lot of calculator-based stuff I think you could see doing with that as well. Let's talk about restaurants next. By the way, if you have any questions at all, Paul, or you want to interrupt me, feel free. Otherwise, I'll just keep going.
Sounds good. Keep going, and I'll definitely jump in with anything. Yeah.
Okay. So for people that own or manage restaurants, one of the things that's obvious for a skill is menuing, being able to see what's on the menu. One of the things that also gets missed, even on the web, is nutrition information. A lot of people want to know, when I'm getting this thing, what's in it? Am I allergic to any of the foods in it? So if I could answer those questions, or if I could tell it hey, I'm allergic to peanuts, what's available? Right? Then they could be oh, well, this is a Chinese restaurant. We put peanuts in a lot of things, but here's the dishes we have that don't have peanuts in them, right? That kind of stuff makes it better for the customer. And I think that's where a lot of this really comes down to, is how do we make the information for our customer as easy as possible to get? How do we make it in their best interest? Even if I tell them look, dude, everything in our menu has 10,000 calories in it. At least I'm telling you that and giving you that information. It might mean you want to tweak up your thing and maybe put less butter in your food. But in general, what that means is the customer can make an informed decision about whether or not they want to eat at your restaurant. Things that tie into that, and we're seeing that with things like Uber already, is the ability to order food, right? Now I want to just tell the Domino's skill that I want a pizza, and it shows up 30 minutes later. That's something that can happen today. But for anybody's restaurant, if you already have connections with DoorDash, or you have your own delivery service, those are the kinds of things that you can do pretty easily inside a skill as well, because you're really just flipping the bit on that, right? Just, we need to order, and this is their information, and this is where we go. So yeah, menu, order taking, nutrition info. Those are all things that stood out to me as good opportunities to incorporate into a skill if you're someone that's running that kind of business. Another one that I spent a decent amount of time thinking about was an accountant. I have an accountant. I don't do my own taxes, but I sit down with a person every year that does my taxes for me. And it made me wonder how much of the work that I'm really doing with my realtor could have been done having a conversation with Alexa. A lot of what my accountant does for me is pulls values out of forms that I have never bothered to understand or interact with myself. And I'm much happier having a professional look at my money than knowing that I will certainly make a mistake and get audited a few years from now. So that felt really good. But like, if you think about TurboTax, right? TurboTax is a simplified set of forms and decisions. Why couldn't I have a conversation with TurboTax or with my accountant or whoever to say, hey, like, here's an easy way for your standard deductions and for your standard returns. That's the kind of stuff you might be able to do. Another thing that accountants have the advantage of is that it's usually a long process. So, and this goes for like the mortgage brokers too. I want to know, where do we stand on things? Have my taxes been submitted yet? Because I know you've got to work on them. When is my refund coming? Right? Like, that's a question everybody has. And I can only imagine how many times an accountant gets a call like, well, after you get me those last 3 forms you owe me, I'll submit it for you, and then you'll get your refund in like 10 days. But that's usually the answer, right? But it seems like Alexa could answer a lot of those things for them as well. Now, this one is near and dear to me. You asked about a dentist. My dad's a dentist, or at least he was before he retired. And I've had a lot of time to think about how a practice could have been run better. He was a wonderful dentist, very caring, good doctor. But ran his own practice, just the one, the whole time. And he looked around at all of his friends, and they opened 7 practices and just kind of managed all of them, right? And made a mint, where he did a very nice job. And I will never take anything away from my father. He did a fantastic job raising and taking care of us. But he was a dentist. He wasn't a businessman. And so as I look at someone that's running dentists and doctors' offices, which is oftentimes a business person now, and the doctor just wants to show up and do medicine. There are so many things. There's one story that I use as an example all the time, which is when we talk about Alexa in the future, I want a scenario in which I've said nothing, and Alexa tells me, hey, you have a dentist appointment next Tuesday. Now, I didn't ask her about getting a dentist appointment. I didn't tell her that I needed to schedule one. I didn't do anything. She was paying attention and noticed that the insurance window, the 6-month insurance window for a cleaning, was about to expire. She knows who my dentist is. She knows my insurance company. She was able to contact the systems at my dentist's office and say, hey, we'd like to schedule him for an appointment because his 6-month window is here, so he can schedule an appointment and get covered by insurance starting on next Tuesday. So then it compared my calendar, my work calendar, my personal calendar, all the obligations I have, compared that to the dentist calendar and said, oh, we have a 4 o'clock slot. All of that stuff happened without me having to interact at all. And it just told me later, like, oh, by the way, you have an appointment next Tuesday. All of that magic happened behind the scenes. That would be amazing. But in today's world, it would still be pretty easy to say, I mean, think of the dance you have to do with every schedule you ever make. What do you have next Tuesday? Well, we have an 8 a.m. Or we have a 4:30 p.m. Okay, well, looking at my schedule, because I'm doing all the parsing myself, I'll take the 8 a.m. That sounds perfect. Okay, we've got you down for 8 a.m. We'll see you on Tuesday, Mr. Blankenburg, right? Like, that's me on the phone with the dentist's office. I'm taking up the front desk person's time, who's also greeting guests as they come in and checking them in and doing all that stuff. Like, you could take that responsibility off of them and push this to voice assistants instead. I think that payments are also something that are interesting. A lot of dentist office, they don't expect you to pay the day that you're there. They'll send you a bill or they'll file it with your insurance, and it takes a little follow-up. So you could check in and say, did you receive my payment? Am I paid up? They could send notifications to you like, hey, by the way, we're still waiting on that $130 payment for that root canal, or whatever it is. I've never had a root canal. I don't know how much they cost. I think it's probably more than that. But those seem good to me. Another thing that I thought would be really interesting, and I think this would be powerful for customers, is the idea that they could be pushing reminders to their customers. Like, I meet with my dentist every 6 months, but how simple would it be for them once a month to be like, you're flossing, right? Like, and I'd be like, when my dentist asks me, are you flossing? The last time I flossed was maybe the last time I was here. Yes, I'm flossing, absolutely. We all lie to ourselves and tell ourselves that we're flossing all the time. But I think that kind of stuff is cool. But for doctors too, right? Like, are you doing your physical therapy? Just a reminder, I can send you another list of the exercises you need to do. Or are you taking your meds, right? Like, doctors could take a more active role in that stuff, even though they're not actively doing anything. Their systems are pushing notifications out to their users to remind them, like, hey, you need to be taking these pills regularly or your heart's not going to do what it needs to do. So those are all like small businessy things that I think would be pretty easy to incorporate into a skill. The last one was like bloggers and influencers. And this is kind of near to me because this is something that I do quite often. But it starts as brochureware, right? How do I promote all the channels that I'm on? How can you find me? But you can do streaming audio and video too. So like this thing that we're doing right now, this voice event, could just as easily have been an Alexa skill that people tune in on their devices and watch, right? There's certainly some work to do that, but it's kind of cool to think about the idea that I could just be pushing my video content to all of the different places all at once. And so then updates was another thing for me, like letting people know what's going on, when the next thing is happening, where we're going to be. Like, that's one thing I've not been very good at, is letting people know all of the conferences that I'm speaking at, where I'm going to be and where they can find me. That feels weird to me to even need to provide, but people care. And they're like, is Jeff going to be there? I want to make sure I hook up and talk with him about X, Y, and Z. And so if it's important to them, it should be important to me. And that's why I put that information out there. So that was my very long, very short list of small businesses and some of the ways that you can use Alexa and voice to enhance your business, I guess.
I love it, and we really needed this, Jeff, because we know I think there's a little bit of fear in terms of like dipping your toe in the water if you're a small business owner, and I think the fear comes from like, what is it even going to be? What is it even going to do? How much is it going to cost? How much am I going to have to do to maintain it? And I love what you started with, which is like the brochureware, which I think in an unplanned way was like a perfect segue out of the previous session on the voice designer, because that's basically what that product is meant to do. It's meant to, along with the blueprint, it's meant to be a way to build like a really simple brochure voice app for Alexa and for Google Assistant. And I think that's like, to your point, that is a better than okay place to start. Like that is a fine place to start for any small business. But then what you did was you gave even more great examples on the Realtor. I think that the lawyer, like, do I have a case? Like, that is a skill. Like, basically, that's a disguised FAQ skill. And I say disguised, like, it's an FAQ skill, but it's packaged in a way that's way more clever than, like, check out our frequently asked questions, right? It's like, do I have a case? That makes so much sense. And same with the restaurateur, like the restaurant owner or franchisee with, like, the calories or, allergy information. Like, that's a really clever disguised FAQ in a way that like makes it a clear differentiator for a small business. And
the trick with most of this is that I'm really proposing that people take a lot of their unstructured data and make it structured, because they have to have it in a structured manner to be able to answer what menu items don't have peanuts. That's hard if I just have a bunch of text on a web page. But if I have it structured in any way, even like in a Google Sheet, now I can do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like, and coming up in the next session is a voice flow tutorial. And I know from having used voice flow quite a bit that's one really good way for even non-technical people to be able to use like Google Sheets, like you're saying, to structure their data and use the capture and the variable and put it in the Google Sheet and be able to have that information. One that I'll throw out there real quick, because I loved what you said about everything, but one that I kind of stumbled across the other day is for the blogger influencer category, you can do Alexa, subscribe me to the name of or ask newsletter name to subscribe me, basically. Mm-hmm. Like you can have a skill that the invocation name can be the name of the newsletter or the name of the website, basically. And it can be ask to subscribe me with the custom intent. And it can be taking the Alexa card data that the user gives permission to access, like name, email, email address, and maybe even phone number to
Right.
subscribe to a text list or an email list. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Wait, Shanna has a question. I don't know if we have time to answer it, but
Yeah, absolutely.
if we
Let's
do
do
have
it.
time, I'd love her. Is it possible to like let her talk? Because I'd love some
Yeah, absolutely.
clarification on what she
Yep.
means.
Let's get her on here.
Oh, wow. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hi,
Shanna.
Shanna.
How are you?
Good. I can't do video because I don't have on makeup, but I would love to.
That's right. You know what? I didn't wear any makeup today either. It's okay.
You know what? Both of us are like chilling on a Friday. So, yeah, so we obviously, as Paul was said, I think in some of the emails, we teach entrepreneurs and small business owners how to underestimate entrepreneurs, how to plan, start, and grow their own business. And so our industries are very diverse, and a lot of the things that you said I think will be helpful. But the ones I wasn't sure about how to connect the dots. So think of like hairstylists, nail artists, fashion stylists. How would they, outside of like confirming an appointment, be able to use that in the same way as like a frequently asked questions? You know, it's not a clear one-to-one to me versus an industry that may
Sure.
have pretty standard questions.
Yeah. So I think for confirming an appointment, so you basically want to call them the day before and be like, "Hey, don't forget you've got an appointment at 1:00 tomorrow." Is that what you're asking?
I'm sorry, I have to tap to speak. Yeah,
That's
so
okay.
I understand how to do that, but you had some really good ideas about how it's just not a calendar basically, but it's really an interactive experience for like,
Right.
you know, the real estate or the lawyer and things like that. Is there a way for that to also be the case in other industries, particularly like hairstylists, nail
Absolutely.
artists, fashion stylists type
Yeah,
thing?
I think the catch is you're going to have a very limited set of things that you can do not being a software developer. But
Okay.
I think that there is even a blueprint that uses a calendar. But I don't know how far it can go with like scheduling and stuff. But that doesn't seem like it would be something that would be hard to do. So
Okay.
that's a blueprint I could even look into creating. But if you have someone that can write a little bit of code, then yes, absolutely anyone could do this. It's not very difficult at all.
Okay.
And the biggest challenge you're going to run into is just finding someone that can spend the time to basically build that skill for you. That's the biggest hurdle you'll have for sure.
Yeah, and I like the idea. I know we have a lot of caterers. We have a food specific class. And so the idea of like, if it has an allergy or, you know, little long facts, maybe about the origin of German chocolate cake or something like that, you
Right.
know, maybe a fun little tidbit as well.
Yeah, no, I think that kind of stuff really adds to the experience. More than just giving me the standard answer, it has 1,200 calories. What else do you want to know? Like
Right.
being able to say it's just 1,200 calories. And actually, if you didn't know this, German chocolate cake comes from Austria, actually, or whatever. That'd be kind of an interesting fact.
Yeah, I don't think
And
it
how
comes
do you
from
guys?
Germany.
Hey, sorry to cut you off,
No.
Shayna, but I'm thinking I like this a lot, and like to kind of take Jeff's realtor friend example at the open house, where like to me they kind of scaled themselves by having Alexa on the counter, and then the realtor could be doing other things.
Right.
I feel like you could do a similar thing with the caterer, right? So like I'm picturing the caterer bringing an Alexa enabled device with them, and while they're serving the food, having like a little a visual. It could even be an Echo Show potentially with a visual on it, or just a regular Alexa enabled device, and having like a card, just a printed card with some questions that they could ask Alexa, similar to the realtor example, and it can be maybe making their life easier serving the food and not having to answer. Just I think things like that are good ways to use the skill in the immediate way to make your business more efficient and effective. And I think part of the issue that small business owners have is like, well, who's going to use it? Who's going to discover it? How is it going to help me? And I think
Yeah.
like, so that's actually what I'm thinking. What do you guys think about that? Like, do you think that would make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I think, and for example, one of our graduates has a brick and mortar restaurant, and it's called Coneheads, and it's a chicken and waffles, but the waffle's actually in a waffle cone and has a lot of unique names. Like he'll call toppings caps. It's a like an urban vibe, a really like a hip hop vibe. And so it'll be kind of cool if he can actually explain, like, these are your options for caps. This is your options for a cap is a side. It's a, you know, a colloquial term for whatever. Yeah. And maybe even talking about his inspiration behind the location, because it's a super cool location. But if you're not a part of the culture of hip hop, you may not understand the lingo. Sure. Versus when I go in, it makes intuitive sense because it's a part of my upbringing. So that may be a cool way for him to use it.
I love that idea.
What city is this in? I got to go to this restaurant.
Oh, Nashville. Come visit us.
Oh, I'm going to have to come down.
Yeah.
So Shayna, I think I would definitely volunteer to help build that Alexa skill for them.
Oh, yeah.
To sort of translate, you know, like, what does this mean? You know, what does this word mean? And I think, and Dawn Avery just threw into the comments, and like, I agree with what she's saying. And like, I think what that does is it puts something at the retail location that will get captured on someone's smartphone, that will get posted to social media, and that will get shared, because it's a unique customer experience that you just don't see every day. And so I think that's a great idea by you.
Oh, thanks. That's fine. And Don said they do it with dry cleaners, so that sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think that this applies to almost any small business. You just have to think about how can you make that experience real for your customers, and what makes sense. Dry cleaning is a good example. When are my clothes going to be ready? Right? Like, that's a simple thing that they have the data someplace. It's just a matter of being able to get it out for the right customer and let them know.
Yeah. This is great. Hey, Jeff, there's one thing that I would like to ask you about, only because it's been mentioned about 4 or 5 times today. And I believe it came from an announcement at Alexa Live a couple weeks ago. And people are just really, really excited about these quick links where, you know, it's a way to get to kind of help discoverability and shareability. And so anything you can share with us on the quick links feature. We've got some developers that are listening in right now who have been talking about it earlier today. Anything you can share would be awesome.
Yeah, so I'll give the quick rundown on quick links. The base idea is that it's something, a link basically that you can embed into your website that will allow a user to start your skill on one of their devices. Hold on, my phone keeps ringing here. So it basically allows you to start a skill on your device. So you can see I have a whole pile of them here behind me, and they all have different names, right? But like, this is the Office Echo Show 5, I think. So as I open that quick link, it'll say, oh, which device do you want to start it on? I choose a device, and then it will tell this device, like, fire it up, start that skill. And it goes, welcome to the skill, right? It starts right from there. I don't have to know the name of the skill. I don't have to tell it how to open. I don't have to do any of that stuff. It just happens. You can also do it like a notification. So maybe the user clicks on it and they're like, I want to do this later. Or maybe they're not home, right? They can do it as a notification, and when they get home, they're going to have that yellow ring glowing on their device. And they can say, what are my notifications? And it's going to be like, oh, you have a quick link. Do you want to open it? And if you say yes, then boom, it kicks you right into the skill the same way. So it's a way to kind of like open the skill later. But the other thing that's cool about this is that what I've described so far is just getting into like the primary entry point of your skill. But you can also create what we call tasks, which basically map to like intents, basically. And with these, what you can do is say, I want them. So I built a trivia game a while back, right? And I had 20 different categories of questions inside of it. Well, I had a new 21st category, and I want the user to be able to see that on the website and be like, hey, you want to try our 21st category, whatever it is, geology or whatever? Yeah, I'll do that. So they click on the link, and it opens the skill, but it doesn't just say, welcome to the trivia game. It says, oh, you're now in the geology section, right? I've basically routed them to a specific intent and let them pick it up there instead. And what's really cool about this is that it means that I don't have to make them go through the front door. I can set them up and put them exactly where I want them to be based on the context of what that click should have been.
Yeah, that seems like a game changer to me, and that's kind of what it's been referred to as today at the Voice event. And I would love to sit here and get geeky about actually how to implement all this, but we'll save that for another day. And I really appreciate your time on this.
I'll sign off now, but it is surprisingly easy. There's a standard URL format, and all you have to do is replace a skill ID with the skill ID of your skill, and you're in. Tasks are a little more complicated, but the basic idea is super simple. So thank you again for having me today, Paul.
Yeah, thanks again for your time, Jeff. Good seeing you, and be well. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, man.